We are leaving. The flood of tears, which had turned into a dam in front of her eyelids, was triggered by a single word. She had prepared herself for this departure. Her motivation was complete. Yet at that word, everything she had held in for years poured out. All the emotions she had kept locked away. All the time she had spent in her homeland burst out in that moment. Perhaps she should leave them behind as well. Her memories and all those she had shared those memories with. She was 68 years old, burdened by serious illnesses like heart disease, diabetes and hypertension. She had lived through things heavy enough to split the trunk of a tree whose roots run deep. In comparison, her illnesses seemed as light as a leaf. She and her husband had been judged as terrorists and trials stormed with injustice. Until that day, she had even hesitated to utter the word terrorist. Her husband was imprisoned. She was released with duties to attend to on the outside. She kept mending wounds in the final hearing. They were both sentenced to 6.3 years. The state had branded them terrorists through slander. She was out on bail, and to her that was an opportunity. She had a few more years left, but the storm of persecution would not cease. She knew that if it calmed, it would not end. Her husband's sentence was upheld. The time she once spent freely with her husband was now reduced to secret meetings. This was far from the ritual of young lovers, unfortunately. The hounds of those without conscience had caught the scent, found her husband and locked him back up. She remained patient, she resisted, she was resilient. She did not cry. Another mountain was added to the range of grief in her heart. She endured sadly, her own case was also upheld. She couldn't even visit him anymore. She had to be content with the news that came from inside. Life would test her harshly. Each time she thought, it can't get worse than this, it did. She heard that her husband had been taken to the hospital. At 75, her husband had already undergone heart surgery during his first imprisonment. She awaited news from him with the timidity of a fawn. The surgery had gone well, but he had been sent back to his cell. Sadly, he caught an infection there, and that infection became the visible cause of his departure from this world. He had been a prisoner, and now his wife was the widow of a martyr. She couldn't attend the funeral, couldn't fulfill her final duties to him. And despite being so close, she felt the exile of distance deep within her bones. Loneliness descended upon her like an iceberg. This wasn't a pain that could be described by mere sorrow. She knew it was a storm of tribulations that could only be overcome with faith and determination. And so she...
The scarf she had knitted in her youth, the rosary she never let slip from her wrinkled fingers, and the smile that never left her face no matter the circumstances. These were her weapons in the fight. The tightest moment in the circle came about 15-20 days after the news of her husband's martyrdom with a police raid. They wanted to make her suffer even more. The creatures that thrived on persecution, who had already made Emily suffer every conceivable pain, I wanted to make her taste new agonies. They had made Anatolia feel too small, as though it would never be able to embrace her again. Anatolia, the land of mothers, was being strangled. Anatolia, under the occupation of enemies. Anatolia, which was meant to be a sanctuary of peace, had become a den of oppression, making the innocent bleed. But she was no longer in that place. She had escaped. It was time to break free from the circle. She would not let the prison take a second martyr. She would stand tall, resisting until the end. That would be her last duty to her husband. She prepared herself. Everyone packed something for the journey. She packed her medicine. They were heavy medications meant to be taken with a good meal. But that word, the weight of that word had been too much, and for the first time it made her cry. We are leaving. The soil of her homeland soaked with the tears of mothers that turned to mud, and she had to sleep on that mud for 2 nights. This was what her homeland had deemed worthy of her in the absence of justice. As the night went on, she lagged behind the group. Maybe this is as far as I go, she said, and sat down. Her companion, sir, said, if you stop, I stop too. They sat together. The squelching sounds of soldiers' boots were heard nearby. They prayed and asked for help. A pleasant scent filled the air. They felt it. Alhamdulillah, the martyrs haven't abandoned us. They said a veil seemed to fall over the eyes of their enemies who didn't see them. After a few hours of patience, they caught up with the group and continued on their way. The scent stayed with them. After crossing the Mirage River, they saw soldiers again. Oh no, said a young man among them. These were the ones who sent me back before, he said. At that moment, the scent spread again. Everyone in the group noticed. Don't worry, they're with us. They won't send us back, someone said. And they weren't sent back. They arrived at a place where justice reigned. She had left the most precious thing, her husband, in the heart of Anatolia. As she departed, she turned back one last time, waved her hands and sent Fatiha prayers to his soul. But now she was certain her husband's body rested beneath the soil of Anatolia, but his soul was with her. Welcome to freedom, Emily and Sarah, my dear sisters. May Allah make your next trials easier.